Hey everybody, Seth Campbell here with the new Segue Says podcast. Well, this week I'm going to introduce a new concept, and that's how to do a segue between two songs that have the same chord progression, but the chord progression starts at different points, which is to say, a different chord comes first, though the cycle is the same. So, before I tell you the songs, I'm just going to show you the chord progression. It's a fairly simple one. The first song we're going to deal with starts this chord progression on G. They're both in C major and they're both at the same tempo. So it's G, A minor, F, C. This is a variation on something my mentor and I refer to as the progression, capital T, capital P, because it's the most common chord progression in all of pop music, and that's which is not to say there aren't a lot of great songs with that progression. I'm going to show you two of them today. But check out, there's a group called Axis of Awesome. They did a song called Four Chords where they string together a huge amount of songs that all use that progression. It's very enlightening. But, in any case, this segue uses two permutations of that progression. Like I said, this one starts on G. And so it's the 5, minor 6, 4, 1, as opposed to 1, 5, minor 6, 4. Again, the chords are in the same order, but a different one starts off. Now the other song starts on the 4 chord. So it's 4, 1, 5, minor 6. So that's what I'm talking about here. And this is an interesting concept because particularly, this is not the only progression that a lot of times you'll find songs that have the same progression in a different order. There are a lot of fairly common progressions, and if you find two songs that utilize the same progression in a different order, you can take advantage of that, and that's what I want to show you today. Now, the two songs, to get into the specifics, are Waiting on the World to Change by John Mayer and Walk Through This World by Marc Cohn. Now, there are two disclaimers I need to make as we start here. First, Waiting on the World to Change is originally in D. I brought it down to C because it's much easier to sing, for me at least, in C. Second, the idea to combine these two songs did not initially come from me. As a matter of fact, it came from Marc Cohn himself, and I'll explain that when we get to Walk Through This World. So, in many ways, I can't take credit for this. However, I'd like to believe that I've complicated it and taken it, to a different level, a bit beyond the way he did it. So, if you'll bear with me, for the two people out there who don't know Waiting on the World to Change, or if you need to hear it now that you know the context of the chord progression, that progression is in the chorus. The verse has a couple variant chords here and there, but here's a verse chorus. Me and all my friends, we're all misunderstood. They said we stand for nothing and there's nowhere we ever could. We see everything that's going wrong with the world and those who lead it, and just feel like we don't have the means to rise above and beat it. So waiting for the world to change. We keep on waiting for the world to change. It's hard to beat the system when you're standing at a distance. So waiting for the world to change. And please forgive my voice. I have a cold today. As I did last week, it won't go away. But that's Waiting on the World to Change. Very straightforward pop song. Everybody knows it because it's absolutely inescapable. Some people love it because of that. Some people hate it because it's inescapable. I like it. It's not my favorite song in the world, but I don't have a problem with it. I haven't been overexposed to it in the ways I have with some other songs, but that's a matter for personal taste. Now, Walk Through This World is, you could almost call it a counterpart to Walking in Memphis, in that it's sort of a geographically centric song in C major, and it's the first track on one of Marc Cohn's albums. The setting is in Philadelphia as opposed to Memphis. It's the same sort of swing 16ths pattern. And like I said, it starts on the 4. Now this time the verse and chorus both utilize this progression, and there are a couple of variants at the end of the chorus. But this is a verse chorus of Walk Through This World. I'm writing you this letter from some old hotel. I can feel the distance between us, from the Spanish Steps to the Liberty Bell. I know the angels have seen us, babe. See you there on 7th Avenue. Well, you're just hanging by a thread, and I'm here in this lonely room without a view, wishing I was there with you instead. So won't you walk through this world with me? Walk through this world with me, over the mountains of mystery. Walk through this world with me. And so again, you can hear that the groove is very similar, and it's a very common chord progression, but it starts in a different place, and so the harmonic sense of where the home is very different. And that's a really fun thing to play around with for any songwriters out there. Is, you know, take a fairly common progression, a progression you've heard somewhere, and just start the one beat on a different chord, and it changes the whole thing just by doing that. And so there's a lot of really creative things you can do when it comes to that. Now, I mentioned the progression is the same, but they start in different places. Now, when I went to see Marc Cohn live, a couple of times as a matter of fact, last winter, he would play that song early in the set. I'd play Walk Through This World, and he'd break down and kind of jam a little bit. And he'd start singing this. Waiting, waiting, waiting for the world to change. Waiting, waiting for the world to change. And if you ever have a chance to see Marc live, I encourage you in the strongest possible terms to do so, because he's a really funny guy. You know, he's got a lot of great stories, and in this song in particular, he keep playing this progression for the world to change, and start singing. I think maybe John Mayer might owe me a little bit of money sometime, and it's a fairly common chord progression, so I probably stole it too. And something like that, and then very memorably, he sang an excerpt of Marvin Gaye's "Sexual Healing" over the same progression, which, for the sake of my viewers, I promise I won't do that. But so that got me thinking. Okay, yeah, I hadn't noticed it, but these songs do have the same progressions, very similar. But the way he was singing it, he's singing the John Mayer lyrics over the progression where it starts in his song, as opposed to waiting, waiting, waiting for the world to change. He starts it halfway through that. So it's waiting, waiting for the world to change. And I thought, okay, so here he's very graciously provided me with this idea. Is there a way I can make it work where I can do the two full songs? And the trick to that is that somewhere you have to reverse where the rhythm is. Now, there are two different ways to do that, and as it happens, one works significantly better for both of these. One is to, at some point, you just start the new progression. You break what you've been doing, and so you'll play two of the chords in a row twice, and that's what you're going to do if you start with Waiting on the World to Change. So you have your last Day our generation is going to rule the population. So I'm waiting for the world to change. And what's convenient is, in the original John Mayer version, it just has the 4-1 tag ending. So, for the world to change, waiting for the world to change. It just repeats those chords. So repeating those two chords once isn't going to throw anybody, and they won't suspect what you're about to do. So, waiting for the world to change. Is now at a different place, but it's the same progression the audience has been hearing through the song, so it's not too unusual. And just to confuse them even more, I like to do this. As we waiting, as if I can start a new chorus, but I'm not, because of course the 1 is at a different place, so it wouldn't work now. That's when you change the piano riff in the right hand to do the melodies of Walk Through This World. Letter from some old hotel. I can feel the distance between us. And so that gets you from waiting on the world to change into Walk Through This World. So now you're in the second song, and you know, if you've been a long-time viewer of this podcast, you know that when available, I like to go back into the first song. So, in theory, you could do the same thing if you wanted to, which is repeat the last 2 chords to start it over, and that would sound something like this. So, waiting for the world to change. And I tried that once, and I didn't like it, because to me, that A minor is the big, it's sort of the punching chord of the chorus. It's where all the emotional force is stored. So the waiting, and to me, I didn't want to give that away before the chorus, to have this chord where the emotion punches right before the chorus. Because to me, that gives away the essential flavor of it. So I thought, okay, so I don't want to do that twice. Well, why not just have a bar of 2/4? So, if you're going 1, 2, 3, 1. Actually, no, I guess it's not even 2/4. It's just half of a phrase. Because this phrase, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 8 beats. 8 beats is a cycle. No matter where you're starting the cycle, the full cycle will be 8 beats. So just give half a cycle, because the next chords are going to be the first 2 chords of the chorus. So all of a sudden, the 1 beat, where the phrase begins, it just switches over very easily. So it'll be walk on. This is the tag ending of the chorus. Walk on, walk on. If you wanted to count slowly and think of it as a 2/4, you could think of it like this: 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So we're waiting for the world to change. Keep on waiting for the world to change. And so now that you're back in the chorus and you've got the lyric phrases supporting you, it's very evident where the cycle begins. And you can almost slip that by unnoticed, and it's only when you really listen to it, wait a minute, there's only half a cycle there. That's a little unusual. So it's once you know how to do it, it's really, really easy. So that's the 2 ways you can change from one chord progression to the word. I mean, it's not really an inversion like it would be with a chord, but I guess it kind of is. In some ways, it's an inversion. You can think of it as an inversion, a permutation, and there are a number of good terms. But if you wanted to switch from a chord progression to a permutation of that chord progression, those are the two ways you can do it. You can repeat a couple of the chords and just start the whole, just do a complete full cycle every time. Just start the new cycle at the end of one. Or you can cut a cycle, in this case, in half. There are probably progressions where you could cut it into thirds or fourths or anything. I mean, it would depend on also where you're trying to get to. Because these happen to start at 180 degrees from each other, but, if I wanted to go from that to one that started on C, I'd have to approach it differently. But I could apply the same principles. And it's whether you want a full cycle or a broken cycle, and you would just break the cycle right before the chord that's going to start the new cycle. So wherever that may be. And you might have to do some rhythmic manipulation in order to make that happen if it's one of the odder times. But I'm confident it can be done and that you can do it if you give it a shot. So there are a couple other things I like to do. Another reason I think these songs go really well together is that both these songs do something really cool for the bridge, and they do it very differently, but both of them change keys just for the bridge, which I think is awesome. Walk Through This World does the same progression down a full step just for the bridge. So you have the last or the second chorus. Walk on, walk on. Notice that it ends with a different chord there and then uses a repeat chord to start a new cycle, even though it's in the same place. That's how it changes the key. So you can apply the same principles if you want to have the same chord progression in a different key. But that's another story for another day, and I am sure we'll get to a segue or two that has those. And now, one thing I really like to do, it's kind of a cute little technique, is when I've played both of these, and the audience is now familiar with the choruses of both, I usually end with Waiting on the World to Change, so, of course it has the tag ending I mentioned earlier. Waiting for the world to change, waiting for the world to change, waiting for the world to change, waiting on the world to change. Well, I figured, the audience has heard Waiting on the World to Change enough here, and wouldn't it be cool to tie these two songs together one more time at the last minute? So this is how I do that, and the fact that they both have world in the title helps. So, it can work like this. Waiting for the world to change. Waiting for the world to change. We walk through this world, waiting for the world to change. We walk through this world, well, we're waiting for the world to change. And I botched hitting the last note there. I hit the wrong. No, but you get the picture. So some segues you want to keep sort of, I don't know if dignified is really the word, but there are others where you can get cute. And this is one of the ones where I like to get cute, because I think it's a cool way to weave the songs back together. And the funny thing is, both titles, Walk Through This World and Waiting on the World to Change, they're over these two chords, and they're both happening where they would in their song cycle. So it sounds very natural. Well, that is this week's episode. Thank you as always for watching, and hope all's well. I will see you next week.